service from the Gnostic tradition of Samael Aun Weor. Gnosis is the root wisdom of all the world's great religions. Gnosis is a universal teaching of practical science, whose goal is absolute liberation from suffering and the complete development of the human being. This lecture is one of hundreds available as free downloads, podcasts, or transcriptions. Our lectures range in topic and complexity in order to address the many needs of humanity. We invite you to browse our library of lectures to find teachings that suit you. Each Saturday, Gnostic Radio broadcasts live and includes a free online classroom allowing listeners to see images, read related scriptures, and ask questions of the speaker. To learn how to participate, visit gnosticradio.org. Gnostic Radio is a service of Glorian Publishing, a non-profit organization. The lectures and radio broadcast have been made possible by the financial support of listeners like you. Most spiritual schools recommend a donation of $10 to $20 per lecture. To make a donation, visit gnosticradio.org. Now, with heartfelt wishes for the end of suffering for all creatures, we begin the lecture. May all beings be happy.
It is an inevitable fact that everyone will die. And a cognizance of that fact is the very basis of an effective spiritual practice. To truly be aware of it on a daily basis. To never forget the inevitability of death. To be a really serious spiritual practitioner, this kind of cognizance is a necessity. Because death, being inevitable, is an opportunity also for a great transformation. If that death is managed with all of the force of our being, with all of the force that we have in our heart and mind. In other words, death is inevitable, but its outcome is susceptible to many modifications and influences. The notion that modern society supports and emphasizes that death is the end is patently false. Death is not an end. It is just a change. We do not cease to exist after death. We just exist in a different way. Someone who's very serious about their spiritual practice knows that and works on that so that that change of death can be beneficial rather than detrimental. And for that reason, the great Indian master Padmasambhava gave a profound teaching about the six betweens, or six intermediate states through which every organism passes many, many times. We're having some technical issues, so let's see if we can sort that out. Does it sound better? Oh, I see. Yeah, look. Something's wrong. Give us one moment. We'll sort it out. we sorted it out. So the six betweens, or bardos, are states of consciousness through which we all pass and have passed many times. The first is what we call the vigil state. The second is related to the dream state. And the third is related with meditation. These three states of being relate to functions of consciousness. They are states of consciousness that we can only access if we have the training. In other words, most of humanity has not experienced these states consciously, but it passes through them unconsciously in a negative form. So when we talk about that all beings pass through the bardos, we all pass through them, but without knowledge, without realizing it, without knowing it, without controlling it. So the first three, as we've been explaining in all these lectures, are the training that we need in order to access the next three, which happen after death. So the six betweens are two groups of three. Serious spiritual training teaches you how to harness the power of these first three bardos, how to take advantage of them, how to transform yourself and your experience of life, so that when the experience of death arrives, you can transform it. The beginning, the basis of all real spiritual work is to be present, to be here and now, to not be distracted, to not allow the mind or the heart or the body to take our attention away from being here and now in the body, seeing, experiencing, hearing, taking in data from the senses. This is the basis of all real spiritual work. Presence, self-awareness, self-observation, self-remembering. There are many names for this function of consciousness, but it does not happen automatically. It does not happen just because you're in a humanoid body. Presence, attention, has to be managed consciously and continuously. There is no autopilot. It doesn't just happen on its own. It takes willpower. This is to take the vigil state and make it vigilant, as opposed to the way most of us live, which is in the vigil state with quotation marks around it. We normally have our so-called vigil state as a state of dreaming. Our so-called vigil state is generally a state of utter distraction. Never remembering that we're here in the body, never remembering what we're doing, where we are, and so we're unable to maintain a continuity of conscious action. It takes training to develop that. It takes a lot of training that you have to give yourself to be present, to be here and now. And that cognizance is divided in two essential aspects: internal states and external events. In other words, our attention needs to be cultivated and developed so that it is capable of being aware of our internal state, thoughts, feelings, and sensations, at the same time that it's maintaining awareness of what's happening in the external event. And furthermore, is capable of seeing the relationship between the two. It sounds easy when you give a technical explanation. But I guarantee you, when you're in a conversation with your friends or your coworkers or your family, you will forget this because you forget yourself. You get so engaged in conversation, so engaged in the debate, so engaged in emotion, in sensations, that you forget yourself. And this is why we suffer. It's this basic identification with false concepts, with fleeting emotion, and with sensations in the body. So the basis of the training is to become aware of that and become fully vigilant all the time. Continual. This takes a lot of willpower. That training deepens when we start applying it also when we're out of the body, in the dream state, which is the second bardo. And in this state, a person who's fully trained does not forget themselves when they're in the dream world. They are aware that they are dreaming. They are aware that they are out of the body. And they do not become identified with anything in the dream world. They remain conscious of themselves. Everybody wants this ability to be able to go out of the body consciously, to have an astral projection or out-of-body experience, a lucid dream. Everybody wants that. But nobody realizes that the ability to have that experience begins here in the physical body, by developing a continual awareness of oneself, never forgetting oneself, never forgetting that you're in the body, always aware of inner states and external events and the relationship between them. Why is that important? Because when you're in the astral world, the mental world, when you're in the world of dreams, asleep, you're not aware of your inner state, and you're not aware of the external event, and you're not aware that you're in your astral body. You dream, because you dream during your physical life, during the day, in your physical body. But if you train during your physical day, in your physical body, to question everything that you perceive, to always be aware of yourself, you will naturally start doing it in your astral body. Naturally, spontaneously. We use an exercise called SOL, which means subject, object, location, in order to develop that skill. Part of that exercise, aside from the self-awareness that I've been describing, is to also test the external event. To test it. To see, what is this place that I'm in? Where am I? Am I really in my physical body or am I in my astral body? So during the day, in your daily life, you learn to start testing things. To pull your finger. To really make it stretch. To fully expect that it will stretch. To test yourself. If I'm in my astral body, if I'm dreaming, my finger will stretch. And if you do that physically and really mean it and really test it, you'll start doing it while you're dreaming too. And then one day, you'll be doing it, you'll be testing it, and all of a sudden your finger will stretch. And you'll realize you're in the astral plane. You're not in your physical body. And you will start to awaken. Similar tests can be to push on things. Push your finger through a wall. Bend your pen or pencil or your book, and it will be flexible in the dream world. It's to test things around you. That only works if you have the cognizance, the presence of attention that drives it. If you do this exercise mechanically, without all of your consciousness present, it won't work. So this training is essential because it starts to prepare the consciousness to be continually observant of everything that's happening to it, inside and outside, and to always be questioning, where am I? What's happening to me? What is going on? I cannot emphasize enough how critical this is, because when you die, you need this skill. Without it, you will die unconsciously. And you will be reborn unconsciously. The third phase, or third bardo, is the phase of meditation. In Sanskrit is dhyana. This doesn't refer to mere concentration. It is a state of consciousness that has complete serenity, is very bright, very clear, very perceptive. It is not a state of daydreaming, of fantasizing. It is a state of beautiful clarity. It is the most beautiful, expansive clarity that you can imagine, that you've ever experienced. It's not a state of consciousness related to how you felt when you ate your first chocolate ice cream. And you felt so good. It's nothing like that. It's not any kind of sensation like a sensation in the body. It has nothing to do with an orgasmic state, like many claim. It is not that. Dhyana is a bright, perceptive, penetrating awareness, a clarity of perception, a calmness of mind, a kind of inner serenity that is deeply profound. Why is that important? In that state, the ego can be seen for what it is. A state of dhyana is a state in which the consciousness is free of the cage of ego, free of pride, free of lust, free of envy, free of fear. And this is the important point. By developing the skill of meditation, which is based on developing skill in the dream state and developing skill in the vigil state, that skill of meditation strengthens the consciousness to be stable and serene no matter what happens in any context. It strengthens the consciousness. It solidifies it. It grows it. But most of all, it helps it access its true nature, which is serenity, which is insight, which is understanding, peace. That's what you want when you die. You need that state of consciousness. Because when you die, you pass through a great transformation, a doorway. And what happens after that depends on you. This lecture is called After We Die. What happens after we die? I can't tell you because it's up to you. The subject or the explanation of what happens after we die is incredibly complicated because it depends on your state of consciousness what will happen. I know everybody wants an easy answer. Well, we all go to heaven or hell, or we all go to this place where there's a bright white light and all our loved ones are there waiting for us, or we just simply cease to exist. We all want these kindergarten Sunday school stories to make us feel better. The facts aren't like that. Death is complicated. It's inevitable. But what happens with it is in your hands. No one else's. Yours. It depends on your state of consciousness. It depends on how skilled you are at managing your consciousness. That's what will determine what happens to you after you die. So we need to study these bardos and understand them very well. After death, there are three becomings or betweens, and they are death, reality, and rebirth. So this second set of three states relates to what happens after the physical body has been discarded. And what happens in these three phases is determined 100% on how you manage your attention. So let's be realistic. I know everybody would like to die peacefully in bed at night. and not have any pain. But that's a daydream. That's a fantasy. Odds are the majority of us will die suffering. It's just a simple fact. If we go to the morgue and we look at all the people who are dead there, the majority of them suffered in some way. Very rare is it that someone has a peaceful, serene death. Most people suffer. They either suffer violence, they suffer illness, they suffer emotionally or mentally. So chances are, so will we. We need to be serious about that and realize it and prepare for it. If we were to die now, today, with the level of training that we have today, how would we manage the process of death if we're very sick, weak, suffering a lot physically, but also having suffering because of having to leave our family, our loved ones, our children, our possessions, all of our attachments? The anguish that we will experience is quite extreme. Probably the most extreme anguish we will have ever experienced throughout our life. How strong is our training in self-observation, in self-remembering, in meditation? Are we strong enough to face that degree of suffering and be serene and not have attachment and not be afraid? Chances are we don't, because we have the ego very alive. We have too much pride, too much shame, too much attachment, too much envy, too much fear. We're too lazy in our practice. We're not serious about managing our attention daily. We're only serious about making money or managing our social image, how others perceive us. Our spiritual work is pretty low on the list. We might mean well, but when we look at how we actually spend our time and energy, we really don't invest much time and energy in our spiritual work, to be honest. This is going to be a real problem for us when we die. And that's because when we die, most of what we right now think is ourselves will be taken away from us. We've shown you this diagram a few times in this course. These two circles, or sets of circles. On the left, we see a sort of illustration of what a living person has. And on the right, what a dead person has. It's obvious that when we die, the physical body is taken from us. We know that. What's also taken is the vital body, which is the energy of the physical body. What is also taken is our personality. Our name, our language, our cultural tastes, what we like as music, what we like as food, our clothing tastes, all of those behavioral characteristics that we think are our identity. That all is abandoned. And what goes into the other world is the raw contents of our mind and heart. And trapped inside of that is the consciousness. If we have never properly trained our consciousness to be aware of itself, we will pass through the phase of death in the exact same way that we dream now at night, with zero cognizance of ourselves, with zero awareness. And because of that, we will pass through all those bardos of the after-death state, completely without consciousness, completely asleep, the same way that we dream now. In order for us to have cognizance of ourselves in these three bardos that happen between lives, we need to have developed during life cognizance of our true identity. A continual awareness of what we really are, which is not the body, it is not energy in the body, and it is not the personality. Unfortunately, Many of us learn spirituality only to strengthen the personality. Many of us learn spirituality that's focused only in the body, only in the vital body as well. For many of us, our spiritual training has been all about, for example, Hatha Yoga or Sufism and other types of exercises in which we really focus on the body and doing different exercises and stretches to try to make the body attractive. Or we've learned techniques to work with energy in the vital body, like Reiki, pranayama, different forms of Tantra, so-called energy work, in which we become very identified with energy. Or, as in the vast majority of cases, our spirituality is focused completely on our personality, our traditional religion or our newly adopted one, and how we appear in it. Looking like a good Christian, or a good Buddhist, or a good Gnostic. Always in school on time in a nice outfit. Always at church. Always doing the things that are expected of us by the spiritual community. Always looking like the role model, or trying to be, or playing humble. That's all personality. It's not real. It is not spirituality. The person who's seriously training in spirituality does not identify themselves with their physical body at all. They take care of it. They feed it well. They keep it relaxed. But they don't spend energy on the body. Likewise, they work with the vital body, conserving energy and using energy wisely, but not overly identified with energy or the vital body. And finally, they don't become identified with the personality, with politics, with schools and movements and groups and religions, with who's the greatest, latest teacher, or the latest, greatest book or trend, or what we're supposed to wear when we go to the retreat or this event or that event. They don't care at all. But instead, their attention is completely in analyzing and studying and understanding the relationship between the mind-heart and the consciousness. Because in that relationship is access to the absolute, which is deeper inside. This is important because when we pass through death, the physical body is destroyed. The vital body is destroyed. The personality is destroyed. What will remain of us if all of a sudden we find ourselves on the other side of the doorway of death, still thinking we have our name, our culture, our religion, our habits, our tastes in food and music and places we like to go, but none of that's really with us anymore? What will happen is we won't know we're dead. We won't realize it. And in 99.9% of the cases, that's what happens. Anyone here who awakens their consciousness and goes out of their body or in meditation, perceives the world of the dead, can talk with any person there, and they will not know that they are dead. And that is our destiny, unless we awaken consciousness seriously. That will happen to us. The reason is we don't even know that we're alive. We're in a daydream all day long and all night long, fantasizing, distracted, not even aware that we're here in the body, not remembering who we really are. So by training in the vigil state, training in the dream state, training in the meditation state, we prepare ourselves to be conscious in the death, reality, and rebirth states, to be aware, to not sleep like an animal. When we study this on the Tree of Life, we see why this is so important. On the lower half of the Tree of Life, we see 5 Sephiroth. The lowest is Malkut, which is the physical body. Obviously, with death, the physical body is taken from us. We lose our connection to it. With that physical body goes the vital body, Yasod, which is the energy of that physical body. We also lose that. We also lose the personality. So what remains are these three Sephiroth: Tiferet, Netzach, and Hod. Consciousness, intellect, and heart. If, in our physical life, we never learn to use attention, it means that we never learn to use our consciousness, which is related with Tiferet. That means that when our physical body is destroyed, and the vital body is destroyed, and the personality is destroyed, and we end up in the fifth dimension, in our protoplasmic lunar bodies, we will have no cognizance of ourselves because we never learn to use the essence, the consciousness, which is rooted in Tiferet. Tiferet, as you see, is above Hod and Netzach. It is on a higher level than the mind and the heart. Tiferet is where our essence emerges from. The essence is the consciousness, our Buddha nature. It is the source of attention, how we pay attention. And that is the same thing as willpower. The same thing. So if in our physical body, during life, we never learn to use this willpower, consciousness, then we will not have access to it when we're dead. Because we never learned how to use it. We'll be asleep, not knowing we're dead, and just pass through those experiences by karma, pushed by karma. But if we've learned to use it, and awakened consciousness, and even better, created the soul, meaning we raised the serpents of the Kundalini, either in the first degree in the physical body, the second in the vital body, the third in the astral body, the fourth in the mental body, the fifth in the causal body. We will have a huge advantage because we will be awake after death. More likely to be awake, let's put it that way. We can still fall asleep. But we'll have a great advantage because we had to have awakened some consciousness to achieve those degrees of initiation. This is important because Tiferet, the causal body, is in the sixth dimension. The mind-heart, or the mental astral bodies, are in the fifth dimension. The fifth dimension is the world of dreams. It's the world of the mind and emotion. On this planet, in our psyche, the fifth dimension is completely corrupted by our ego. The fifth dimension, because we are so deeply asleep and because we have so many desires, is a very, very tricky place. And you all know that because you remember your dreams, if you remember them. Dreams are very different from what happens in the physical world. Everything works differently. Everything behaves differently. It's very hard to see what is real in the fifth dimension. And we are very easily fooled there. Because of so much desire in our minds, so much pride, and so much lust. If we want clarity and be able to see what we're experiencing and be able to discriminate what we see and experience, we have to develop that skill in the physical body now. Because after we die, we will be in the fifth dimension. Exactly the same as the world of dreams that we enter every night. But the difference is that our connection to the physical body is severed. We won't wake up. So how are you dreaming now? With cognizance or without? Do you remember everything that happened to you for those 6 or 8 or 10 hours that you were lying in the bed? How much of that do you remember? How much of that are you cognizant of? How much of that time were you aware of where you were and what you were doing? The answer to that question will tell you what's going to happen to you when you die. And if you don't like the answer, then you should start training. The full tree of life shows us all the dimensions of nature. The physical body, Malkut, is an axis or a point of departure from which you can access lower worlds or higher worlds. And on this tree of life, on this map, we can understand a statement that was explained by Samael Aun Weor in many of his books and lectures, in which he said, the person who dies faces 3 potential outcomes. The ones who have earned it achieve a vacation of sorts, an experience in the superior worlds, in which they experience the pleasures and happiness and serenity of the heavens, those dimensions that are not corrupted by desire. The second path is that they are reborn immediately, with no break, but instead come immediately back into a physical body to continue suffering. Their karma, the results of their actions. And the third option is that the person has been unable to pay their debts or earn the ticket to have a vacation. And so they descend into the lower worlds, what we call hell, in order to start paying what they owe. So here on this map, we see these options. In the middle is Malkut, the physical body. When this physical body is dead, when it dies, our karma determines. Our state of consciousness determines. Do we get reborn immediately? Do we earn a vacation in the superior worlds? Or do we descend into the lower worlds? It depends. It depends on us. So let's examine exactly how this happens, as close as we can get exactly, because really there are so many factors at play in this scenario. So in general terms, what happens is this. You die. The connection to your physical body is severed. At that point, you enter the 5th dimension, which is the same world of dreams that you enter now when you sleep. You will enter that world exactly the same way that you fall asleep now. If you fall asleep without any cognizance of that transition between the vigil state and the dream state, you will die in the same way, without any cognizance. Some people, because of the strong experience of death, can receive a shock to the consciousness and can be aware. That happens. But you can't count on it. Those are accidental. They're not produced by will. But we've all heard cases of near-death experiences or after-death experiences which are produced by precisely this kind of shock. They're accidental. They happen because the consciousness suddenly realizes what's happening, or it receives a jolt of energy from the being in order to produce the cognizance that's needed. But it's rare. Most of the time, people die the same way they fall asleep at night. They just fall asleep and float into dream world without any awareness of what's happening to them. So because of that, we won't know where we're going or what we're doing. We will be in a dream. No cognizance. No awareness. Not even knowing we're dead. We will perceive the same way we perceive our dreams. What do you see in your dreams? Things that make no sense? Or are you at work every night because you're at work every day? Or are you visiting places from your childhood? Or places that you fantasize about? Are you dreaming in the movie that you watched? Or the book that you've been reading? Those are the same places that you will see after you're dead. There is a related state of consciousness here. In Sanskrit, it's called devachan. Many people, especially in modern spiritual groups, talk about devachan as though it's something good, as though it's a kind of heaven in which you're reunited with all your loved ones. But let me explain something very clearly. Devachan is a projection of the mind. It doesn't exist. It's an illusion. Many of those people who die and then come back report seeing all their loved ones and being welcomed by all the people that died before them. And they experienced that. But it was a projection of their mind. That kind of experience can happen in reality also. But one has to earn that. It doesn't just happen to everybody. It has to be earned. In most cases, it isn't. And so when most people die, they project that. They're projecting their desire because they're afraid, because they have attachment. And so what they see is what they want to see. After an experience of death, and the soul or the consciousness is liberated from the body, at a certain point, the consciousness begins to receive a test. This happens to every disincarnated entity. The disincarnated one suddenly is where they were right before they died. Seeing whatever they were seeing and experiencing whatever they were experiencing right before they died. If they were at home having a meal, suddenly they are there having the meal at home. Enjoying the food, enjoying the company of their family or friends. And that event plays out. And they start to go backwards, event to event, experiencing everything to the smallest degree that they experienced in their physical life while they were alive. And the problem is, nobody realizes that they're dead. So they're living out their life. And without realizing it, they're living it out in reverse. In other words, they are replaying every instant of their entire lifetime. Everyone's heard about that experience of when you die, your life plays back before you. Let me explain something clearly so you understand this. Time in the physical world is only in the physical world. The fifth dimension does not have time like we do. And that's why when you fall asleep for a nap, and you can dream and feel like you're dreaming for hours and hours and hours, and then you wake up and it's only been 15 minutes. And you're astonished. I thought I was asleep for hours. And that's because time functions differently. It has a different vibration, a different rate. We call the fifth dimension eternity because it's really circular. Time is not linear. Anyhow, that's another subject. The point being, this process of reviewing one's life is relative. Sometimes you may hear it happens in 3 days. That number is symbolic, not literal. The actual expanse of time is your lifetime. You relive it. But will you be conscious of it? Will you be aware of it? What will happen as you replay the events of your life and you revisit your mundane, dull job? Will you respond to it in the same way that you respond to it now? With boredom and seeking distraction? What about those moments when you suffered, when you were rejected or betrayed or lied to? Will you experience the same pain and anger and resentment? What about those moments when you indulged in lust? What about those years you spent identified with pornography, identified with lust for another person or persons? What will happen to you when you replay those scenes in your mind when you're dead? Will you be identified with them again? Will you demonstrate through this ordeal that you have not changed? In other words, after you die, you will relive every experience you've had in your life to the finest degree of detail. It will all play back again. Why is the question. Why? It isn't a joke. It isn't the cruelty of God. It is a function of nature that is necessary in order to evaluate how the soul changed during its lifetime in the most recent physical body. Did it change, and how? Did it get worse or better? Now, some of you who've been in these classes or studied this material for some time, I hope, have realized something extremely significant, and that is the importance of the practice of retrospection. We teach retrospection on every retreat, and we practice it on every retreat because it's so important. The practice of retrospection is a practice of meditation in which we consciously review the day. So in the evening, when you sit to meditate and you put your body in a state of rest, you deepen your self-awareness that you've been cultivating all day long. You deepen that that presence and self-awareness. You close your eyes and you rest your body, and you start to play back in your mind everything that happened to you during the day. Not to change it, but to observe it and to learn from it. To find those things that you shouldn't have done, or shouldn't have felt, or shouldn't have thought, and to analyze them and learn how to change. Now, if you've spent your lifetime in your physical body, training in that way, I'm sure you can see that your experience of the revival of your life's experience after death will be very different from someone who never trained in retrospection. Because you have spent your whole lifetime reviewing your life. Looking over all the things that you thought and felt and did. Not identifying. Not getting sucked back into the emotions, the thoughts, the attachments. So the person who has training and dies and is cognizant and begins to revive and relive their life's experience will be aware of it. Will know, I'm dead. And now I'm reviewing all my experiences. But I will not be distracted. I will not react with my pride, with my shame, with my fear, my lust, my envy, my regret. But instead, you will know how to be serene, to call up that state of dhyana that you've cultivated in meditation, to be serene, at peace, and very cognizant, very conscious, so that as those scenes play, you watch them, you learn from them, you see the sum of your life reduced down to a mathematical equation. and you will have more understanding of your life from that experience. That definitive moment is what we're training for. We talk a lot in this tradition about initiations, creating the bodies, sexual transmutation, astral experiences, Jinn state, awakening chakras, pranayamas, breathing exercises, Tibetan exercises, all kinds of different techniques and tools and experiences, but none of them matter as much as what happens when you die. None of them. Whether you have the solar bodies or not, if you are asleep when you die, if you pass through that state asleep, those solar bodies cannot do you any good. And don't think that the solar bodies or initiations will guarantee you that you will be awake. They don't. You can't use the tool if you don't remember it. There are many people that have solar bodies and they are completely asleep. The solar bodies don't awaken your consciousness. They're just vessels. They're vehicles. They don't guarantee you anything. Masters fall. Buddhas fall because they become identified. What matters is our state of attention. That matters more than anything. I say that because it's easy for the single people to feel a lot of anxiety because they don't have a spouse. And they feel so upset. I'm not going to get my bodies or raise my kundalini. I'll never make it. And then the married people think, I'm married. I can't do it with this burden. My spouse makes my life too hard. I'm suffering too much. These are distractions. What matters is the state of consciousness. Your marital state doesn't matter. Whether you have the bodies or not, you are in the situation you are in. Take advantage of it. Don't be distracted by details, by theories, by beliefs. Pay attention. Be present. Learn to be present and serene in every experience of life. Now, let me go back to this, actually. From moment to moment, our mind is surging. Our heart is surging. It's never still. It's never at rest. Because we're always having new impressions enter us. And those impressions come in the senses, and they create reactions. Because we don't transform them consciously. We might halfway do it sometimes when we remember. But most of the time we don't remember. So the mind is constantly surging with new impressions, new sensations, new thoughts and feelings. What are those reactions churned up in the mind during our daily life? If we're not managing them, if we're not conscious of them and transforming them, we're asleep. When we go to sleep at night, the same thing happens. We have a lot of perceptions that happen to us in the internal worlds. We're not cognizant of that. Those impressions flow into us, and the mind reacts. We become identified with all our desires. That's why we dream about expressing our anger, feeding our lust, feeding our envy. Our dreams are reflections of the contents of our mind. If we die without learning how to transform those impressions, we will pass through these three bardos of death, reality, and rebirth in the same way. We will pass through our resuscitation of our life's experience in the same way. And just as today, when someone criticizes us and we feel pain in our heart, and we feel anger or resentment or even shame, or a blossoming of pride, I'm not like that. The same thing will happen after death. And we relive that experience, and the same reaction emerges as us, and we get identified with it again. Thus, we haven't changed. The danger is that after that experience of reviving and reviewing our life's experience, we are judged. Not by a judge who's set up on a throne to condemn us. Because we tend to think of judgment as a person in authority with a very cruel face, sitting up on a high chair, eager to send us to hell. That is not what judgment is. Judgment is simply an acknowledgement of the facts. That's all it is. It is the exposure and examination of the facts. Your good intentions do not fit into the equation. What are judged are the actions of the soul. We've all seen the ancient Egyptian illustrations of Anubis with his hand on the scale. And on the scale are balanced two trays. On one is a feather, and on the other a jar. And that symbol is very deep, because facing Anubis is Ani, the soul, the disincarnated person, who's there to face Anubis and have his soul weighed. Anubis doesn't do this out of cruelty. He does it out of love. Many people have this impression of Anubis as a tyrant god because he is the god of the dead. He is not. He is a Buddha of compassion. A great, compassionate angel. A great master with enormous love for humanity. But his job is to balance two columns that keep the temple standing: severity and mercy. These two always have to be in balance with each other. He is the god of the scale, who balances the good versus the bad. The harm we did balanced against the good that we did. And the other meaning there is the feather is the mind, and the jar is the heart. He checks the balance of our heart and mind. You see on that diagram I showed you, heart, mind is what goes into the internal worlds after death. Not the personality, not the body. Heart and mind. This is what Anubis measures. Now this judgment happens in the sixth dimension, which is a world of objectivity. There is no ego there. There is no partiality. There is no tyranny. There is only the objective, clear facts. So when the disincarnated soul has passed through their resuscitation of their life's experience, the soul is brought into the courts of the law in the sixth dimension, in the temple of Ma'at. Ma'at is an Egyptian word that means truth. The temple of truth. Now, if you're honest, really, you should be squirming in your seat right now. Because what it means is that all the things that nobody else knows about you are laid out before the court. Every detail. Everything that no one has ever known is also visible to the courts of the law. Visible to you, visible to your innermost, to your divine mother, and to all the judges who sit in that divine court. And all of your actions are weighed on the scale. And based on that, the result of that precise mathematical analysis of your karma, cause and effect, then it's determined what will happen to that disincarnated person. Have they earned entrance into the heavens to have a vacation? Do they have any initiations? Did they do any serious spiritual work on themselves? Are they even aware of being in the court, of being dead? Or is the person in such a bad situation karmically, but with just enough good deeds and just enough will to change that we can give them one more body, one more chance to try to work on themselves? Or third, is there no hope? Have they demonstrated absolutely no intention of changing? And they're only getting worse, and they're only making people suffer? And they should be sent into the lower realms to be purified. These are the three options. So, the only one that can answer what will happen after you die is you. It all comes down to what you've done with your time, done with your energy, done with your life. In this, there's no room for fantasies. There's no room for affirmations or believing that we're a good person so God will forgive us. God forgives every soul once the possibility of the crime has been removed from that soul. In other words, forgiveness is earned through action. Those souls who earn a vacation enter into the heavens. Their experience there is determined by how much they earned. If someone did a lot of sacrifice for humanity, really helped people a lot, I'm talking about on the level of Gandhi, who sacrificed his entire life to try to help his fellow countrymen, who suffered a lot to help people. A soul like that can earn a vacation in nirvana, can earn a break from suffering. That break is a break from their own ego. Their ego still exists. Their ego is still in hell. But the soul, the essence, the consciousness is taken out and given a vacation. Those who walk on the Shravakayana or Pratyeka Buddha paths can also earn some minor vacations because of their purity, because they've spent time purifying themselves. They haven't helped others that much, but they have eliminated ego, and through that they earn small vacations. But those are the only ways that we can earn them. Vacations are not just given out for free. Nothing is free. Everything is earned. And as I explained, those souls who receive that experience receive it in relation to what they've earned. It isn't permanent. It's temporary because the ego is still alive. The only souls that can enter into the heavenly realms or nirvanic realms and remain there are those who have earned it. In other words, they have elevated their consciousness so that it belongs in that level. In other words, they are angels or Buddhas. They may still have a percentage of ego, and because of that, they will have to descend back in order to eliminate that ego. But the consciousness can stay at a certain level according to what they've earned, and only for a given period of time. Eventually, the karma will pull them back. Opposing that are those who didn't earn a vacation at all, which, to be frank, is pretty much all of us. Unless we've done some very serious work and very rigorous sacrifice for others, work on our ego and sacrifice for others, we cannot expect a vacation. Our karma is too strong and the ego is too strong. We should expect hell and prepare and do everything we can to avoid it. But don't assume just because you're a Gnostic student that you're going to go to heaven. Not going to happen. I promise you. Nothing is given for free. You can belong to any group you want. It doesn't give you anything. You can have all the books in your house and have a beautiful altar and go to school every week. Good for you. Doesn't prevent you from going to hell. Hell is related to the contents of your mind. the contents of your heart. So if we do die and have to pay that karma by processing through the infernal worlds, then that will be our experience after death. But that is not forever. This is a great misconception propagated by many religions nowadays, that heaven and hell are forever. They are not. The places exist forever, yes. But the souls don't stay there forever. It would make no sense to have to pay forever for something. God is not a tyrant who wants people to suffer for eternity. God is a God of love. Christ is pure love. Hell was established by Christ as an act of love to purify those souls who are not capable of purifying themselves. Thus, hell is an experience that will be sustained as long as it's needed to clean the soul of its crimes. Now, don't start thinking that, well, I didn't do much that was bad, so maybe I'll only be there for a couple of days. I wish it were like that, but it's not. We've had many bodies. For all of us, it's more than 100 in humanoid bodies. And we have a lot of karma to answer for. A lot of pride, a lot of envy, a lot of anger, a lot of lust. And that has to be purified from our consciousness. So we will enter into those worlds and gradually descend from level to level into deeper and deeper and more intense applications of pressure and heat, which pulverize the defects that we have. It is not pleasant. If you've ever had a nightmare, you've tasted it. It is extremely unpleasant. Many people ask, are the souls conscious of being in hell? Are they aware of the suffering? And the question is absolutely yes. The consciousness has to be freed. The nature of consciousness is to perceive. It is to be aware. That is its nature. But we've trapped it in defects, in vices. So when that soul, that consciousness passes through hell, and hell is pulverizing those vices to free the soul is aware of that and suffers. It's painful. And it lasts as long as it takes to destroy those defects. Hundreds of years, thousands of years. Look into your own mind. What kind of defects do you find there? And how hard are they? How deep? How strong? That will give you an indication of what you have to look forward to if you don't eliminate them now on your own. It's very serious business. Gradually, all the souls that enter into the hell realms are brought through that great recycling machine of nature. And all the forces of nature work to pulverize the defects until at the end, depending on the karma of that soul, it is projected out of it clean. And able to start again in a new cycle of evolution, in another age. Remember also that time is relative, as I was explaining. Time is relative. The experience of time in hell is extremely slow. You won't have your iPod, so you can pass the time. You won't have a good book to read or a TV to watch. You'll be revisiting and replaying the cause of the crimes. So this is a very serious topic. And when all of those debts are paid, the soul is freed from that realm in order to begin again a new cycle, but having gained nothing but a lot of suffering. Some people mistakenly believe that they can take the path through hell as a spiritual path. And this is a very popular concept, even if you may not have heard about it now. It is very popular amongst many groups. In Kabbalah, in Jewish groups, Buddhist Tantra, and Hindu Tantra, this is an extremely popular notion. You may not be introduced to it in the introductory levels of those schools, but as you awaken your conscious negatively, they will start to reveal to you their intention, which is to indulge in the ego, to fatten the ego, to make it as heavy and dense as possible in order to propel themselves through hell. But their logic is all backwards because they ignore karma, cause and effect. They think that by making a big fat ego, they can project themselves out the other side more rapidly and acquire more knowledge. But they are ignoring karma. Everything you do has a consequence. Every time they deepen an ego, they acquire consequences for that must be paid. Suffering is deepened. They are delaying their progress and committing crimes. So be aware of what you study. What you see on this chart that shows the heavens and hells are levels of nature. The heavens correspond to regions of light that we can't perceive with our physical senses. And the hells also to opposed regions of light that we can't perceive with our physical senses. In other words, the heavens relate to ultraviolet levels of light, and the hells to infrared. Another thing to clarify for you is that these forms of light, these levels of existence, are not in some other place. They are right here. We just don't see it. Your consciousness can develop the ability to see it if you awaken. When a soul is disincarnated, it enters into the fifth dimension, which is a region of light that is not physically perceptible, but is clairvoyantly perceptible. In other words, the fifth dimension is here and now. We just don't see it. That's why occasionally, due to atmospheric effects or energetic effects on a person, you can sometimes see the dead. Usually, when we see someone who's dead, it's the disincarnated personality. It's the old personality that has not yet decayed and is just wandering around. I had an experience of this a block and a half from here a few years ago. When I was asleep, I was laying down to sleep, doing my dream yoga practice, trying to maintain cognizance of myself, lying down in a bed. And an old woman came in my room, very angry, yelling at me. "What are you doing here?" She had a Polish accent. "What are you doing here? You shouldn't be in here. Get out." And I just looked at her and started to say a little prayer. And she dissolved. It was an old personality of a woman who used to live in that apartment, who still has not been decayed by nature. It wasn't her soul, it was her personality. So if you're falling asleep or you have a drowsy state or there are atmospheric effects, that level of nature can become visible. So most of what people report as ghosts are just that. Disincarnated personalities. Graveyards are filled with them. I'm going to sidetrack a little bit to explain something about a corpse. This is important. It's a tradition in most Western religions nowadays to bury the dead. This is a very unfortunate tradition. It harms the dead, and it harms the living. The belief arose because of a misinterpretation of Jewish and Christian scripture, in which in a future age, the Messiah is supposed to come and raise the dead from their graves So people took that literally and thought they had to prepare the physical body in a nice suit, all dressed up and ready to go to heaven. This is a misinterpretation. It's unfortunate because it's the origin of many illnesses and sicknesses and a lot of black magic. If you have a choice and you're serious in these types of studies, do not be buried. Have your body cremated. Cremation annihilates and completely destroys all that physical matter and liberates all the energy from that matter, and also quickly severs the connections to the personality so that you are free of that, so that your soul or consciousness becomes free of those attachments and those bonds that draw you back to earth, to the physical level. This is important. If you're a member of Second Chamber, there are rituals that can be done for you after you die, but it's necessary that your body is present for the ritual, if possible. So if you're someone who's in Second Chamber and wants to have that ritual done for you, you might want to include that in your will or in any statement to your family, that you want your body to be present at a ritual for the good of your soul. In some traditions, like in Tibetan Buddhism and in Hinduism, the body is kept at a certain location for a period of time in order to allow certain rituals to be performed and also to allow the soul to gradually realize that they are dead. It gives them an opportunity to come face to face with their corpse and see it and know that they are dead. And this can be helpful, especially for someone who doesn't have a lot of training. So in certain traditions, the body can be kept on hand for 3 days or as much as 40 days. And there are special techniques for keeping the body for that length of time. And generally, the 40 days are for advanced practitioners, because there are techniques that are involved there that help them move on to a new birth. But to return to the topic at hand, graveyards, cemeteries, tombs are filled with decaying corpses, which are really filthy and disgusting. And also, there are all the disincarnated personalities who dissolve in proportion to the decay of the body. So slowly, especially if the body has been suffused with embalming fluid or other chemicals to preserve it. The body can be there for hundreds of years. That creates an obstacle for the person who died. All that decaying, rotting energy, the matter and energy there, creates an obstacle, a problem. It's compassionate to cremate. It frees the soul from those bonds. Anyhow, on this diagram, what we're seeing is levels of light in nature. You probably already know that with our physical senses, we only perceive a very narrow band of the light that is actually being radiated in space around us. We only see an extremely small range of light. All around us is a huge range of light, which is solar light. And it illuminates many other dimensions of nature that we don't see physically. In other words, the dead are all around us. There are other races. There are other life forms all around us about which we have no knowledge because we don't see them. We don't have the eyes to see it. When we die and we're freed of the physical limitation, the consciousness is projected into the fifth dimension. In that dimension, we see a much broader range of light. The fifth dimension is under the influence of a lunar energy or energy of the moon. This level is called limbo. It is like an antechamber, a place from which we go to other places. In that region, we find many, many, many dead people. And they're not aware that they're dead. Now, after we pass through the process of judgment, where we relive our existence and then we receive our path to go forward, we will experience either the higher or lower aspects of these ranges of light. In his book, The Book of the Dead, Samael Aun Weor explains the path of a disincarnated soul who earned an experience in nirvana. And he explains in detail what the soul perceives as it gradually has its vacation ascending up through these levels, influenced by the moon, influenced by Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and finally Saturn. That type of vacation is a small mirror image, a reflection of the experiences that a soul has when they pass through the advanced stages of initiation or full awakening. In other words, let me explain this clearly because I don't want you to misunderstand this. After you die, if you've earned a vacation, you can have a brief experience of what it's like to be fully awake, fully enlightened. An experience in nirvana, but in levels. The soul can traverse through the different planes or different regions of the superior worlds. And that soul, if it doesn't have training, if it doesn't have cognizance of itself or religion, it just happened to earn a vacation, could come back into the world and think that it's liberated and think that it's a Buddha when it isn't. The same type of experience can be had in meditation, where people can earn a trip through these elevated regions and then come back and think, I was in nirvana. I must be a great master. A very naive mistake and a very common one. And there are many who claim to be the incarnation of such and such person, and this great master come back to earth, and so on, when they're really not any different from anyone else. They have a huge fat ego of pride, and that's the only difference. On the obverse side, those who have a trip through the infernal worlds also pass through regions influenced by the planets, but these are the infernal aspect. So in the regions of the moon, in the regions of Mercury, in the regions of Venus. And these regions are well described by Dante in his book, The Divine Comedy. In each level, there are psychological influences. Different aspects of the psyche become more readily apparent because they are under the influence of those planets. So if you study the Klipoth or the books or scriptures about hell, you will understand why the planets are related to those spheres and why the dead pass through them. It's important that we grasp this polarity in nature. Superior worlds and inferior worlds, they reflect each other. There is a tree of life in the heavens, and there is a tree of death in the hells. Where we go depends on the content of our mind. So I encourage you to train very rigorously in the first 3 bardos. Learn to never forget yourself. Be present. Be here and now at all times and in all things. Learn to always be watching what's happening in your inner state psychologically in your 3 brains, and what's happening in the external event in the world around you, and what is the relationship between the two. Constantly watching. It isn't a matter of intellectually analyzing, oh, I see, that is my intellectual brain. It isn't that. It is to be constantly watching. Never stopping, watching and watching and watching. And then, after you've done that the whole day, and at night, retrospect that day. Continue your self-observation, but sit down or lie down and let your body come to a complete rest and review the entire day. Everything you can remember. review it. Just play it back. You don't have to go into any deep intellectual analysis. Listen to your heart. Your heart will tell you, I shouldn't have done that. How could I have reacted that way? I felt pain there. Why did I feel pain? This is in the heart that you ask these questions, not the intellect. And then after that, when you're going to go to sleep, go deeper in that self-observation and self-awareness. And let the body fall asleep, but don't forget yourself. This is the moment where you train to die. We have many techniques and practices where we work with dream yoga and astral projection, including the SOL technique I taught you. We also have the many mantras, many prayers, many visualizations that we work with. Many techniques, like, for example, to let the body become very drowsy and relaxed, and as soon as you realize that you're about to fall asleep, you jump out of the bed in order to float in the dream world. These are very effective techniques, but you can't do that when you're dying. You may not have arms or legs. You may not have a body that can move at all. It's too late to train at that point. You'll be facing the great moment. You need to be ready. So every night when you fall asleep consciously. Let the body fall asleep, but you remain aware. You probably won't succeed tonight. Just be prepared for that. It's probably going to take you some training. But try it every single time you're going to sleep, even for a nap. Learn this. You can learn it. If you have a cat, they do it every time they take a nap. They're experts, and they can teach you how to do it. You can do this because it's part of your inner nature. It's the nature of being any organism on this planet. When you sleep, your consciousness goes into the fifth dimension. You just don't know it. So learn to know it. That skill needs to be developed now. When we have a life that's relatively free of suffering and affliction. When you can actually have a peaceful evening. Even if your life is chaotic and painful, you do sleep every night. So when you lie down to sleep, take advantage of that experience of having some degree of quietude and silence where you can really concentrate. And you need to remember something really important here. The ability to do this is more important than a couple of hours of sleep. Unconscious. A couple of hours of really trying to do this is way more valuable to you than passing out like an animal and sleeping without any cognizance. I've had so many students say, well, I can't do that because I have to sleep well for work the next day or school. I have too many things to do and I'm going to wake up tired and I'll be miserable. Okay, yeah, you might be, but you might have learned something too. What if you started learning this technique? Wouldn't that be more valuable than those couple of hours that you've got? I mean, you've already slept how many hours out of your life, right? We've already slept years away. We can give up a little time here and there to learn these techniques. If you're a very serious practitioner and you don't care if people make fun of you at work the next day because you look sleepy, don't sleep at all. Don't allow yourself to fall asleep completely as a consciousness, but work with this technique throughout the night. You can, it just takes willpower. Most of us don't have enough willpower. We love to fall asleep. But if you have sufficient willpower and you lie down and you start really seriously working to fall asleep cognizantly, gradually, with sustained effort, you will figure it out. It isn't hard. It takes relaxation and concentration. And the thing that's going to accelerate your progress in this the most rapidly is to be remembering yourself all day long. It isn't going to, I've heard certain students say, is there some technique I can do before I do this practice that will give me a lot of energy and help me do it? Yes, remember yourself all day. That would be the most powerful thing you can do. to sustain a continued state of observation of yourself. A little extra help, do some pranayama, or do your transmutation practice with your spouse. That will give you a lot of energy to the consciousness if you do it properly. It will energize the consciousness for these types of exercises. And you can use any of the other mantras and techniques that are taught in the many books. The important thing is, learn to fall asleep consciously. It's easier to go out of the body this way than any other way. The technique of SOL, where you pull your finger or test matter, is kind of an accidental practice, because it depends on you just happening to remember every once in a while. You might not remember. But if you learn to fall asleep consciously, you fall asleep every day. Imagine if you can do that every day consciously. Then you could be going out of your body every night consciously. And then from there, you can learn to navigate in the fifth dimension consciously. And then when you die, you're ready. You're ready. Especially if you've meditated and learned how to access dhyana, a real serenity. This is what's needed if your death is painful or traumatic. The ability to go out of the body consciously is important, and we need that. But that's only a first step. What if your body is painful? What if your heart is in pain? Your mind is in pain? You have a lot of anguish and attachment at the moment you die. Will you have sufficient concentration to go out of your body consciously at that point? Probably not. Because the mind will be so agitated and the body suffering so much. The way you can do it then is to be able to meditate deeply. In a state of dhyana, you can be in a body that is filled with suffering, but not suffer. The consciousness can be in that body, aware of the suffering, but not suffering. And that's the technique, really, that you'll need if you have a very painful death. And chances are many of us will. So these are the very basic, fundamental techniques to prepare for a good death. There are more advanced techniques, many of them. But those we have to work towards. And anyone who's very serious and learns these introductory techniques can go on and learn more. Can learn to do many things that are really and truly amazing. But it's useless for us to study them. We can't even retain cognizance of ourselves for a few minutes at a time. So, do you have any questions?
When you talk about when we die and we can do like, when we can remember, real something like that, to have the practices for our body and soul to go properly. Can you do that, like, if they have to be done on people who have studied and been preparing themselves for it, or you can do it on your family members, for example, somebody died in your family and you want their soul to be relieved of all the physical body and you pray for them. Can you apply that on them, or they have to also be able, or they have to prepare themselves?
Right, I understand. There are rituals appropriate for every level of person. So it depends on the degree of training of the person, what they'll actually be able to be affected by or helped by. The techniques specifically that I was mentioning related to second chamber are for people who've had training. It would only benefit them. They have to have enough skill so that once dead, they know they're dead. Then that technique will help them. And it's similar to many of the techniques in Hindu and Buddhist Tantra. Also in Taoist practice, there are techniques for helping the dead. But for those who don't have training, there are also techniques that we can do. And some of them are detailed in the books of Samael and Vior. But they're quite simple. Basically, they are to pray and to send a lot of positive energy to that person and to encourage them to go, to be aware of themselves and to not be attached to the family, but to let go. That brings up an important point, which is any of us who are attending to the side of a person who is dying, it is absolutely essential that you help provide a positive environment for that person. If there are relatives who are crying and sobbing, have them leave. Because that type of intense emotional energy can cultivate a lot of attachment in the person who's dying and can really interfere with their process of going on. It's very important that the dying person is provided an environment of serenity as best as we can give them, where they can accept that they're going to die and look forward to it and take advantage of it. Even without training, it's possible for that perspective to have an impact on their death. So there are, in different traditions, there are different tools that you can use to help them. If you know about Christianity, there's a book about the art of dying that can help them. There are a lot of prayers that can help them. If someone's from a Buddhist background, there are sections of the Book of the Dead that are designed specifically for a person who has no training. And those sections are read aloud, along with prayers that are done to help them. So it depends on the tradition. There are many techniques. Question back here.
Yeah. How important is the death of the ego in regards to preparing ourselves to astral project consciously, and also to prepare ourselves with the death of the physical body and everything connected with it?
Mm-hmm. The death of the ego obviously is the most important factor in all of our spiritual work. That can't be emphasized enough. It should be our central, ultimate focus daily, is to be working on the ego, precisely because of its karmic weight that keeps us suffering. But having said that, you can't work on the ego if you're asleep. So in order to get to a point where you can work effectively on the ego, you have to awaken consciousness. And that includes physically and in the other dimensions. So really, you need a practice that's well-rounded, that has these different aspects. And that's why we analyze these first three bardos. All three of these, vigil, dream, and meditation, are about awakening consciousness and getting the consciousness to be stable and serene so that it can work on the ego without getting identified. The danger exists for many people who learn this doctrine and learn about the importance of working on the ego, and they work very diligently on it, but they never awaken. And so that work becomes the ego working against the ego, which will be fruitless. And you find that it's very common in many schools, in many traditions. The students become very fanatic. They're hurting themselves and hurting other people. And they talk a lot about working on the ego, but in fact, they're building it because they don't have consciousness under control, active, awake, aware, and able to serenely work on the ego without identification. Does that make sense to you? This happens all over the place, especially in Gnosis, especially in the Gnostic tradition, and especially in Buddhism and Hinduism. It's very common. There's a lot of focus on working on defects, on aggregates, sins. But your pride and your shame cannot eliminate your lust. Your Gnostic pride cannot eliminate your envy. So to work on the ego effectively, you need consciousness that is unmodified by ego. And the same happens with the process of dying. Someone may have built a big, fat, spiritual ego. And that ego can be awake. It can have perception. You've got to remember that every ego has in it consciousness. It's the consciousness that gives the ego its power, its energy. Consciousness is perception. It is clairvoyance. It is astral travel. And if that consciousness is trapped in pride, it can go into the astral plane. And so there are many students who learn to awaken an ego or a set of egos and have experiences in meditation, astral projection, going to different places in the lower realms, thinking it's heaven. Thinking they're working on the ego when they're really making it fat. You see, none of us think we're bad. Nobody thinks they're doing wrong. Nobody thinks they're doing evil. And as soon as they start having experiences, they think, see, I'm succeeding, I'm doing it the right way, and everybody else is doing it wrong. And that's what you hear, right? If you go to the different groups and listen, they all say, we have the only true method, and everybody else is mistaken, and everybody else is going to hell but us. That's pride. So it's really important to make the difference. Learn to awaken, free of any ego. And to know the taste of that is not an easy thing. The ego is extremely subtle and extremely clever. So that's why I always recommend that constant inner awareness, questioning what you experience inside and outside, always doubting, am I really experiencing that? Who is experiencing that? Am I building pride because of these experiences? Am I building envy? We always have to be questioning and doubting. And that's one way of staying aware of the ego. Any other question? Please.
Maybe just a play on words, but we talk about subject, object, location, which is actually in Tibetan rights, right? And then in the book of the Revolution of Dialectic, I guess on the fallacy of the ego, it talks about how we shouldn't separate ourselves from subject, object, perceiver, perceive, and blah, blah, blah. So this is a play on words, or what is this really?
Yeah, it's difficult to understand because the intellect gets in the way with the terminology. It's very hard to resolve what appears to be a contradiction. The answer to that comes out of practice. What I would suggest to you is to not avoid the contradiction. Allow it to be contradictory. And work with it. And what emerges through practice, in my experience, is that you start to see it's not a contradiction at all. It's a matter of perspective. It's just a perspective. It's how you see things. That's what makes the difference. So, in certain books, in Revolution of the Dialectic, in The Great Rebellion, and in Revolutionary Psychology, Samael Aun explains that it's necessary to separate between states and events, observer and observed, etc. And that sounds like a division, and he calls it a division of attention in those three books. But as you mentioned, in Revolution of the Dialectic, he says, don't separate. And it sounds contradictory. And I remember I mentioned in a previous lecture a few months ago that he also said in two different places, you are not the I. You are not the ego. But then in another book he says, never ever say that you are not the ego. You are the ego. But these are contradictory instructions. How do we understand that? Well, you have to go deep into the meaning, right? So the advice that I would give you is simply this. Work intensely on the cognizance of everything. In the full cognizance of everything, there is no separation. But in order to learn that, you have to separate. It's a way of training consciousness to become aware of observer and observed. And once you establish that awareness, the difference between them vanishes because there is no real difference. But you first have to establish the awareness of it. Does that make sense? Okay, that's all. Any question back here?
Yeah. Is it possible to do work on the consciousness while in the heavenly realm? If you cannot, then it will seem that those heavenly vacations you were lauding in this lecture are a bit of waste. You will be expending in karma just to receive some pleasurable perceptions, but cannot utilize this in any way for spiritual advancement.
Right.
And if you can make progress in those realms, why will masters ever want to fall? A more relevant question for our current situation might be, can we end on the way?
Let me answer the first part first. Yeah, let me answer the first part. The question is about, can we still work on ourselves if we earn a vacation in the heavenly realms? And if we can, why would masters ever want to fall from there? It's very important that at some point in our practice, either during our physical life, or if we didn't have it then, after death, that we at some point in our development as a soul experience what it's like in the superior world. It's extremely important that we have that experience. And this is one of the reasons why we emphasize meditation and astral travel so much. The reason for that is, when we say work on ourselves, we need to understand what that means. When we talk about it physically, we're generally talking about working on the ego, on eliminating the ego. And generally, we want to work on the ego because we want to stop suffering. We're tired of being in pain. We're tired of having karma. We're tired of not having any influence or control over the course of our life. So that's usually why we want to work on the ego. And then we also have that longing to know God and to know what's really real about spirituality and heaven. And the honest truth is, you can never comprehend what an ego truly is until you understand what it should be. And what that means is this. If you're experiencing lust, that is a certain type of light that has been modified by desire and become lust. But when the modification of that light is eliminated, either through hell or through cognizant work on ourselves, that light is revealed to be chastity, which is very pure and very beautiful. You can't understand lust until you understand chastity. And likewise, you're trying to work on pride, if you're trying to work on envy, you cannot really understand those defects until you understand that pride really is modified humility. It's humility that became an ego, an I. When the I is removed, humility is revealed as the light, which is beautiful. And envy is revealed to be happiness for others. So, in some schools, there is an intense focus on ego. And they talk a lot about the ego and working on the ego. And this is good. But it can't succeed unless you also are working on understanding the virtue. What you should have done instead of what you did. So the experiences that a person can have either during life or after death in the superior worlds are an experience that shows you the true nature of consciousness in those levels, as opposed to hell. And you need that experience. Why? We only know the cage that we're in. We think this is happiness. We think getting a new car or getting a diploma or getting a house or paying off the mortgage is happiness. It isn't. It has nothing to do with real happiness. Genuine happiness has to do with how the soul vibrates when it's free of ego, and that is a vibration in the superior world. So those experiences teach you a lot, whether you have them during life or after death. They teach you a lot. They teach you a lot about suffering and how bad suffering really is. So we need that. When we're working on the ego, we need to be understanding its opposite. If we don't, we will never want to abandon the ego. We're so accustomed to the ego, we think that's it, especially lust. This is the biggest obstacle most people have with this teaching. They don't understand that lust is the inferior aspect of that energy. Chastity is what it really should be, and it is far superior to lust in every way. People think that through lust they get satisfaction and they get happiness, and they're wrong. Through lust only comes discontentment and an increasing of desire. Through chastity comes true contentment and happiness and love. You see, lust is animal sexuality. Chastity is divine sexuality. It is not an absence of sexuality. It is divine, pure. No ego, no lust, no pride, no anger, no envy, no resentment, no fighting, no jealousy, no fear or doubt about the spouse, but love and contentment, perfect. And this is true for every ego. We only think pride can make us happy because we only know pride. We don't realize how much suffering pride creates. So when we have our meditation practice focused on pride, we need to also be studying what is humility. It's only that that will help you truly renounce pride. When you see that humility is better. If you never see that it's better, you will never renounce the defect. And this is an obstacle that many students get caught in. They work on the ego and work on the ego, but they don't really believe in it. Because they've never experienced anything else. This is why experiences in the superior worlds are important. And this is why people who just begin in this tradition are usually given those kind of experiences. You'll hear many beginners who arrive here in this teaching and start having experiences with angels and Buddhas and masters, and they get all inspired because that's the being showing them you can have something more than just pornography and money and suffering all the time. There is something more. And the second part of that question was, why do masters fall? If we can work on ourselves in those superior levels, why do they fall? They fall because they fall victim to desire, just like anyone. But more subtle forms of desire. The truth is, whatever world we're in, wherever we are, we can work on ourselves because the work is about the consciousness developing itself, knowing itself. Whether we're in hell or in the physical world or in heaven, our focus should be on that, learning about the true nature of the consciousness. That true nature is the absolute. It is not an I, a superior I, or a being. That is not its true nature. And in any place and time, we can turn our inquiry into that nature and learn about it. So there's never an excuse, I can't work on myself. That's a lie. In every moment of every day and night, you can work and learn just by inquiring back to where that attention is coming from. Where is your attention coming from? Your true nature. Is there another question?
If we find ourselves in hell, is there anything beneficial that we can do there? Or is there nothing to do but to go through the purification?
So the question is, if we find ourselves in hell, what can we do that's beneficial there? The answer depends on whether you're already dead or not. The answer depends on that. The reality is that we are in hell already. We just haven't realized it. This physical world is sinking into hell. Hell is defined by a complication of energy, where the laws become more and more complicated in order to reduce matter down to its simplest forms. That's what hell does. It applies more and more laws to break down matter and energy. That's happening all around us. The proof of it is to visit any big city and see how complicated suffering is becoming. How difficult. It is the sinking of matter and energy into deeper and deeper laws to start the process of purification. And we can also see nature reflecting that change. Nature is starting to implement that process of breaking things down. And if you don't believe me, just watch the news. It's been happening, it's been building for a century. And it's going to continue building. If you awaken consciousness in hell, good. Become aware of it. Learn about it. Try and find out why you are where you are. If you are there, it's because you belong there. So what brought you there? If you still have a physical body, then take advantage of that experience so that you don't have to go back there when you lose that physical body. So I would suggest that you pray to your Divine Mother and ask her to teach you why you're there and how to change it. If you awaken consciousness in hell after you've already lost your physical body, you can do the same thing, but it's going to be more difficult for you. You're going to have to make some pretty serious negotiations to change your situation. It won't be easy. It can be done. The door to repentance is always open. On that note, I should mention something. This whole process that I explained today about what happens after death when we review our life experience and then we appear in the courts. There's an opportunity there to make a negotiation. You can negotiate your path, but not if you're not aware that you're there. If you're not aware of being in that court when you're dead, how can you negotiate? You need to be awake. So if you awaken consciousness and die, and then you're awake when your case is presented to the court, you can make an appeal. They have lawyers there in that court. It sounds weird. But there are beings who will intercede on your behalf and who will help you make deals and arrangements so that you can continue working on yourself in a new physical body with the circumstances necessary to do so. But you will have to pay for it. Everything costs something. If you're willing to make that kind of exchange, it can be done. You can even make that arrangement now. But to do it, you need cognizance. You need to be awake. Another question?
Even if you are in your 108th life, is this like a cut-off time for reincarnation? How does this relate to the lecture today?
Samael and Vior told all of us that humanity moves in waves, and that when the human organisms, when the souls, rather, the essences, enter into humanoid bodies, they are given a limited window or time span within which to escape mechanical nature and enter into conscious evolution. In other words, to start moving upwards into the superior worlds. That type of work doesn't happen mechanically or as a present from God. We have to earn it. We have to become real human beings. But nature is a system of laws, and one of those laws is that our time in between heaven and hell in a physical humanoid body is limited to 108 existences. That number 108 is deeply symbolic, but it also has a literal meaning. So it may be that we are on our 108th life. And since humanity moves in waves, we are all on our last lives. Which means that if we don't, in this life, succeed in gaining a foothold in the superior worlds, then our opportunity to take a new physical body is lost. And we will start descending into the inferior worlds. Now, naturally, this is subject to karma, cause and effect. There are many souls who are really bad, who don't get 108 lives. And there are a few souls who are really good, and so they earn a few more lives in order to keep working. So we have to define ourselves. If we do a lot of good for humanity, really help humanity in a very significant way, then we can earn an extra life. But that term, very significant, needs to be understood. You won't gain that just by attending a school or wearing the right spiritual clothing. You won't even gain it by giving $5 or $10 a week to a spiritual group. You have to make a significant contribution to the needs of humanity. And that can come in any number of forms. I mentioned Gandhi earlier, who made a significant contribution to the well-being of millions of people. It wasn't directly a spiritual thing that he did, but it improved the livelihood of many millions of people. He received the benefit of that action. So if you want to earn extra existence, you have to question yourself in that way. What can I do? How can I give of myself to others? In a significant way, according to my skills and talents, the things that I can do to help other people. That's what you have to ask. I've told you before in other lectures that I know for a fact that I'm on my last life. I know it. I don't care if anybody doesn't believe me. I've had too many experiences knowing that. And that's why I'm doing what I can do. I can't do much, but I do as much as I can. So the same has to be true for anyone else who wants another opportunity. I don't have the audacity or the arrogance to assume I'm going to succeed in this lifetime. I seriously doubt it. I'm too weak. I'm too lazy. I need another life. So I'm working hard to try to earn that. And really, this is the focus. If you've ever studied Tibetan Buddhism, this is the entire focus of Tibetan Buddhism. Not on this life, on the next one. The next one is not set in stone yet. You might get one, you might not. It's not decided yet. It depends on what you do now. Your current life has limitations. At least you have the chance to practice spirituality, to practice Gnosis. That's huge benefit. And if you take advantage of that and really use it well, you can earn an even better opportunity in your next life. Now that brings up an important memory, something that's coming in my mind now that's really important about this. There are many prophecies and predictions about the end of this era, and I hinted at it a moment ago when I said nature is starting to consume things. It is true that humanoids are now in their 108th lives, and that most of the human beings on this planet who are dying now will not come back into new bodies. This is true. It's also true that this race is nearing its end, and over the next number of years, it will be completely wiped from this planet. This is also true. No one knows the date and the hour, but it will happen. So that begs the question, if everything's going to end, why would I want to come back into a new body? You don't have to come back here. That's the answer. And to me, that's pretty enticing. I don't want to come back here. There are billions of planets. Billions where you can continue working. We just don't know about them. There are also other levels of existence, other dimensions where you can continue working. And Samael Aun Weor mentioned this in his lecture about the mysteries of life and death. He said that if you earn it, you can take a new body in another world, in another place that will help you to keep working on yourself. So don't feel scared and afraid about what's happening on this planet. We need to be concerned. We need to be aware of it. But it also doesn't mean that we're limited by it. We need to take it as an inspiration to do better and to earn a better chance, to keep having our eye up into the heavens. Any other questions? Yes?
So once you reach 108 and you die and you no longer have a body to reincarnate into,
Yeah.
whatever state you're in at that point is permanent?
No, not permanent. Nothing's permanent. Whatever state you're in at that point just determines what happens with your evolution next. And you will go along according to the karmic current that you've established. So if that karmic current is weighed down by a lot of karma, it will pull you into being recycled by nature so you can be purified. But if that karmic current is more projected upwards because of good deeds, then you can earn another chance to keep trying to ascend that current. Make sense? Nothing is permanent.
So if you get to the purification process, for example, would you incarnate into another body, or
Yeah, that gets really complicated.
where does it?
The process of being recycled by nature is very complicated and very painful because of how complicated and painful our mind is. Nature works in dimensions. So to try to explain this briefly, we know that the physical world is between the heavens and the hells. And everything physical has a psychological aspect because all the dimensions are interpenetrating. Right now we have these physical bodies, which are the sort of vessel or representative physically of the ego, right? And also of the consciousness. Everything that we are as a person, both positive and negative, is represented in the physical body. When that physical body dies, yeah, it's all in the book Hell, Devil, and Karma. It's explained there. It's true. When that physical body dies, all that energy of the psyche has to be handled by nature, both the good parts and the bad parts. The bad parts, of course, will be recycled in hell. And in some cases, there are physical components that help transmit that energy and manage it in the process of devolution. And generally, those are in the bodies of animals. Monkeys. Pigs. Dogs. Rats, another example. And I'll give you my personal opinion. Please take this with a grain of salt. Maybe a jar of salt. In my opinion,
I have not confirmed this through any experience in the inner world, so please be aware of that. Don't spread this around like I'm saying this is the truth. It's my opinion, based on my perception thus far, that the way this humanity is processing animals for food, chicken, pigs, cows, is related to the process of hell that we are all headed into. All of those bodies of the chickens and cows and pigs and all the animals that are being tortured, the way they're being tortured now, has some direct correlation to the karma of this humanity and how the consciousness is being processed through nature. It wouldn't surprise me at all if those bodies are the vehicles through which the egos are flowing as they get dissolved. Because whatever's in that animal is suffering a lot. Wouldn't surprise me if that was our egos of pride and vanity and fear and envy in those bodies. It would make sense. But again, I haven't confirmed that. I'm just trying to understand how that situation can exist on this planet, because it's a horrifying situation. If you've ever seen inside of a meat plant or where they're raising these animals, it is utterly reprehensible. It should not be allowed. But it's happening, and it's been happening for decades, and it's getting worse. Why? There must be a reason in nature and in our karma for that to be happening. And to me, the two point at each other. The nature of our psyche, humanity's entering into hell, there might be a relation. Yes?
What about the animals that they're grass-fed and the planet, like pretty and nicely?
I guess they have less karma, the animals that suffer less. But the point is that everything in nature has a function. Nothing is accidental. Every animal, every body, every physical body is processing energy in some way. And we're seeing a lot of suffering on this planet, not just in humanoids, but amongst the animals. And there's a reason for that. So I'm just trying to put together 2 + 2, and to me, it's sort of, they seem to relate. Any other questions? Yes?
And you said a dog is an evolutive animal and cat, because I know that we use cats for meditation purposes and like to be like kind of like protection when you go into the astral.
Mm-hmm.
So cat is more the evolutive animal.
Well, I don't think that we can say definitively that all cats are evolving and that all dogs are devolving, etc. I don't think nature is that defined. I think it depends. Nature is the divine mother, and she has an intelligence and a power that we can't comprehend. I think that in general, according to what the Master Samael taught us, that cats are evolving, but I think there are exceptions. I think that it's possible for the divine mother to put an ego of a person in a cat so that that ego can be processed through nature. Likewise with dogs. Some dogs are evolving, some are devolving. It depends. Nature is beautiful and complicated, and my little puny intellect really can't grasp all of that. So I think we have to speak in generalities rather than saying definitively one way or the other. So, but yeah, if you have a cat to help you with your practices, this is good.
Well, you mentioned that about when we go into going to sleep and putting our body to sleep, and we want to go and meditate.
Right.
And we have to learn from the cat.
Well, it depends. Again, it's going to depend on the cat.
Yeah.
Whether that cat is at a level where it can help you, and a type of cat that can help you. They're not all the same. Specifically with related to astral projection or going out of the body consciously, in general, you want to find a black cat.
Yeah.
They just have a special affinity with being able to do that. They have a lot of power. But it doesn't mean that every black cat will be good. They're just elementals, you know. So they're just innocent animals. And you have to know the level of the animal and its characteristics. They're just like people. They have a lot of differences amongst them. Some are strong, some are weak, some are unreliable.
Does the cat have to be totally black? Or
No.
have a white spot on it?
It can. You have to know the cat and feel it and get to know it, and then you'll determine if it's the right cat. It's individual. And was there another question back there? No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
The
The presentation of this lecture was made possible by donations from listeners like you. Help Gnostic Radio to help others. Make a donation by visiting gnosticradio.org. For questions and deeper understanding of this lecture, we invite you to explore the wide variety of resources available on our websites. Thank you for your support. May all beings be happy.